Cool. Hey, everybody. It's a little weird that the only person that I see is Ruth and nobody else, but I'm going to picture a packed room.
I'm actually surprised how many people are here. So yeah, it's pretty packed.
Okay, good. Good. I assume everyone's here for the content, not for me. So we'll get started. My name is Nick Cusick. I'm the Climate Program Manager with Pierce Conservation District. And before you ask why a Climate Program Manager is presenting on GIS, just part of the course for a CD employee, I wear multiple hats at Pierce, and that has included managing all of our GIS and data for the past several years. Ruth, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ruth McCauley, Senior GIS Analyst at Flow Analytics. We're a GIS firm, and we are the GIS provider for the AWC GIS Consortium, which is the Association of Washington Cities. So any city and non-city entity in Washington can join and get our GIS services at a discount. So I've been working with Nick for 5 years now, and we're going to talk a little bit about the history of GIS at Pierce and some of the things we've done.
Thanks, Ruth. Here's a quick rundown of what we're going to get in today. I'm not sure if we have a full hour and a half of content for you, which is, I think, a relief for everybody. I get to talk more about the fun stuff, the background to just the natural progression we took with GIS and how we got to Enterprise at PCD. And then Ruth more so is going to get into the nitty-gritty of the Enterprise setup and how that functions. So she'll be great as far as the technical expertise goes. Circa 2018, when I first started with Pierce, most of our data management was in disarray. GIS was happening in different silos and even in different staff folders, and there just wasn't a very good or cohesive system in place for data management or classification or administration. So when I got tapped to take the lead on organizing a strategy around this, the first order of business was organizing an internal cross-program team with representatives from each program. And that's when things really started cranking for us. The biggest work involved was standardizing our data management and organizing internal trainings, establishing naming conventions, which is huge, and then creating standard operating procedures as well, so that staff are always familiar about the best practice to follow. And we also focused on things like new employee onboarding and offboarding projects when staff left PCD. As I mentioned in the previous slide, our data classification was in pretty bad shape, meaning we didn't have one. I liken this to entering a library that has no Dewey Decimal System, which I'm not sure if we still use the Dewey Decimal System these days, but that's basically what it was. We also had multiple copies of the same data sets. So every time somebody used a geoprocessing tool like clipping or buffering, et cetera, there was just multiple copies. And it was a bit of a free-for-all. So we established a data classification system based on 4 broad categories. The first was classifying administrative data, and we consider that any data from partners or other agencies, and also generalized features like parcels and census blocks and water bodies, et cetera. The second bucket was our programmatic data, which represented more at a higher level all of our program accomplishments. And so this included things like best management practices installed and where our clients were located. These were most often represented as points on a map. Field data was more at a higher resolution or a property level. assessing characteristics and features of a property. And that's also data that we collected in the field on iPads and in the Collector app. Features like this included mapping invasive species, restoration plantings, and data needed for farm plans, stuff like that. And then the final category was kind of a miscellaneous category that we called single-use data. And that was data really constrained to the development of a single map. For example, buffering a stream segment for a restoration site. And once we came up with our Dewey Decimal System, we organized just a single folder structure on our server where we began to file all this data. At the time, programs were each tasked with developing a data dictionary as well for each of the respective data sets, which we updated annually. And on top of reorganizing and improving how we administered our data, we had a couple more challenges we were struggling with. And these included, first of all, data living on our local server, and then similar copies living on GIS Online, and those data sets not talking with one another. Secondly, there were just too many cooks in the kitchen. We had 5 to 10 GIS users in the office regularly, which meant that we couldn't control permissions to limit users from creating multiple copies of data or adding new fields or data schema, et cetera. Again, I think I used the word free for all. And then finally, third, we were running into storage limits on GIS Online. And early on, I was the recipient of at least a few of those infamous Andrew emails saying I needed to chill out on how much data I was storing on WACD's GIS Online account. This is when we arrived at a decision to create our ArcGIS server setup, and with the support of Flow Analytics, Ruth, helping to create that new data infrastructure. Pictured here was an early whiteboard session when we were first conceptualizing this, where our current practice was importing CSV files regularly, and that was kind of it, to more of an integrative approach across our different platforms. By going with ArcGIS Server, this allowed for that seamless syncing that we were looking for between our local desktop SQL databases and GIS Online. And the first time we had single authoritative data sets that synced across multiple platforms and tracked edits, et cetera. This also solved the other challenges we were running up against. SQL allowed us for the first time to set permissions for limiting access, so that staff no longer could create multiple copies of the same data, et cetera. Those permissions live solely in an administrative role in login. And also we were no longer limited by data storage limits on GIS Online. Instead, with a terabyte, 2 terabyte plus local server, we were fine on that end. All of this went into place about a year before the pandemic, when we all went remote and started VPNing into our office computers. There arose pretty quickly some additional unforeseen challenges, and primarily that was very, very slow performance speeds. Recently, and this was a process to get there, but we migrated all of our GIS data into a virtual machine on Azure platform, which has significantly boosted our performance speeds. It's a beast of a computer, I think about 56 gigabytes of memory. And we've been really happy so far with the change. And then finally, with this move and the knowledge that Arc Server would be phased out within the next few years, and to improve and make more efficient publishing and administration of our data, we moved over to Enterprise and GIS portal, which Ruth is going to get into now.
All right. So I don't know who's there, but I know probably a couple of you have ArcGIS Server currently. And so ArcGIS Server has been around, oh my gosh, 20 years maybe. And the benefit of ArcGIS Server and then having your data in SQL is, like Nick said, to get the seamless editing. Well, as some of you may know, there's quite a few changes happening at Esri. So one is ArcMap / ArcGIS Desktop is going away in 2026. And the new platform is ArcGIS Pro, which some of you are using, hopefully. And along with that, at version, and I'm talking about this a little later, but kind of giving you an overview. With the Enterprise 11 version, you can no longer publish from ArcMap, you're publishing from Pro. Now, I would say 5+ years ago, Esri introduced Portal, and Portal looks just like ArcGIS Online, however, it's behind your firewall. So now instead of referring to it as Portal and Arc Server, Esri likes to refer to it as ArcGIS Enterprise, and which means Portal and Server together. Yeah, Nick, we can go to the next slide. Now, Pierce already had ArcGIS Server and their desktop licenses, which they received free through the NRCS. And if there's some of you that don't have ArcGIS Server, definitely take advantage of that if you can. However, with some of the changes I just talked about, we decided it would be best for Pierce to implement Portal as well. Now, it's not as straight being conservation district and you all getting your licenses free through the NRCS. There were a few little tricky things that we had to work out. Now, NRCS cannot provide a free Portal license. You have to pay for at least one license. And I guess I'm talking about that on the next slide. But let's talk about first a few of the reasons that Pierce decided to implement Portal. It's more seamless. It's even more seamless than having ArcGIS Server and SQL. Even though they have ArcGIS Online, which all of you take advantage of through Andrew, when they would publish a feature service to ArcGIS Server, they had to have an extra step of adding that item to ArcGIS Online. So, for instance, they published a knotweed feature service that needed to be used out in the field for field data collection. They would then have to add that item to ArcGIS Online, create the web map, and then the users could log into that out in the field. So now with Portal, they don't have to do that extra step now. And then, like Nick talked about, they wanted to avoid running into the credit issue. So if you're storing all of your data in SQL, you don't have to worry about that. It's just referencing your data instead of physically storing it in ArcGIS Online. And then with the release of Enterprise 11, you'll no longer be able to publish from ArcMap. And so you want to start using ArcGIS Pro. And Esri cannot guarantee that a standalone ArcGIS server will continue to be supported in the future. And publishing, so those last two things are kind of linked, because publishing to a standalone ArcGIS server in Pro is currently supported, but it's a little funky, it's a little tricky. And there's no plan to get rid of that, but Esri's been a little vague on that. So we wanted to make sure that Pierce was future-proofed against all of those Esri changes. All right, next slide, Nick. So there are some pros and cons, and especially being a conservation district, little funky things. So pros, seamless publishing from pro to portal. Data is backed up, having your data in SQL Server, and you're not having to worry about using credits in AGO. Cons, so due to the nature of the licensing with NRCS, they cannot provide free portal licenses. You have to purchase at least one creator license, which is $550 a year. And users still need to log in to ArcGIS Online to view the data because you only have one user in portal. So, you know, depending on, if you only have one user at your district, I guess it's fine, but I'm sure most of you have people collecting out data out in the field, and so you'll need multiple logins. So those logins are already created in your ArcGIS Online account that you all share. However, Andrew and the two of us had to work together to set up a collaboration between Pierce's portal and ArcGIS Online. So it would be seamless publishing across. So what happens is Nick will publish data from Pro to Portal, and then it shows up in a group in the ArcGIS Online account. So we're still skipping that step of having to add the item, that extra step. So it works out, but there's just a few little funky things that you have to consider. All right, next slide. So Nick talked a little bit about this. So with the decision at Pierce to move to Azure, both for the enterprise and for their users to remote in and access their data and use Pro. So we had to work with their IT to set this up. And however, once the machine is available to start installing, it looks just like any other machine that you log into. So I'm sure some of us are used to logging into other virtual machines. It's just any other kind of Windows-based server machine. Installation is the same as it would be on, a server that you have on premise or another virtual machine. And the GIS users or Nick or whoever's needing to log in and publish will just use remote desktop, log in, and open up Pro and publish the same way you would on any other machine. So that part goes really smoothly. I think that's the end. I went over that really fast. So anybody have any questions?
I have one. What were the costs of all that?
So it's just it's my time, and then the $550 creator license. And actually, I'll let Nick. I don't know if Nick knows the cost of the Azure environment. That would be an additional.
No, I don't. And you don't need Azure. You don't need Azure.
Right.
To run this.
Yep.
We were doing this anyways, not just for GIS reasons.
Yep. So it'd be like purchasing a server or a virtual machine housed in a data center. I think those costs are pretty standard, and you can probably look that up. But it would also vary on how many cores you have on the server and how much memory, those kinds of things.
I would definitely recommend it. It's been a huge improvement for folks using GIS at home.
What's going to be your update cycle with that Azure server online? Have you figured that out yet?
Yeah, I'm not in on the Azure setup, unfortunately, so I can't answer any Azure specific questions.
I think that the IT, department is paying, or Pierce is paying some sort of, I don't know if it's yearly or monthly, but I think your Microsoft's, the nice part about Azure is Microsoft is managing that. So they're in charge of making sure it works and updates and all that fun stuff. So I'm not, I'm sure we could find out that information from your, the IT group, but it might be online too, actually.
So how's it working for everyone? Is it working well, or are there still bugs in it? Are people using it?
Yeah, people are using it. I'm still in the process of publishing all of our data to Portal, so folks can start accessing it on GIS Online. But everything's going well so far.
That public, or is it only for CDs? Can the general public access it once it's on GIS Online?
Yeah, you can set the permission level so that it's only available internally or externally to the public.
What's the extent of what we're allowed to do with this? We are starting like a water bank, and we're gonna have a web page just for that, and part of it will be a suitability map, which we are hoping will be interactive online. Is that something that we can do through this, or do we have to do that separately?
I'm not sure who's talking, but are you already a member of the ArcGIS Online organization managed by Andrew?
Yeah. How big is the data set? Are we talking?
It would be like a wire at a time, like, and then it would be individually within that. You would include people, parcels that are suitable for new.
So you wouldn't have the
Water
entire
rights.
county's parcel debt layer up there, just the suitable ones for those water rights.
It would have a lot of different layers on it. I would imagine it would be, tributaries, and it would be users. And
Which
water
county?
rights. Okanagan.
Okanagan,
Yeah.
because I don't think they have a county GIS up yet.
They do, but you have to download shape files.
Yeah, so it's this setting up an enterprise might be the way to go if you're talking a lot of data. If you're talking a little bit of data, after you've processed it all and you're just showing it,
Yeah.
going through our organization, the org, it might be a simpler way to do this.
Yeah.
But if it's a little bit of data, if it's a lot of data,
It's a lot.
then it might be better to
If you
go
went,
with
like, we can
an
look at
enterprise.
it later, but I could show you an example of one.
Yeah.
That is already like that Kittitas is doing.
Okay, yeah, we could do that. Yeah. I think using something like this, the enterprise setup is one, you're going to be going for, you're moving all of your data up to, for the server, all your major data up to a server, and you want to use that. Or you have a really big project like she was talking about, and you have the money to go, because this is a lot of time and money to put up there and keep up and keep running. But if you have gobs and gobs of data, this is the way to go about it. So we're not having to buy massive amounts of credits just because one district has 100 gigabytes worth of data on our board. But it all depends on how much data it is.
What would be the cost?
I'd have to look up what it costs. I don't recall off the top of my head how many, because because of our org, we have 240 users split between 47 districts, and we have to go through every year and take the user accounts out and how much data everyone's using and then build those districts for that data. Off the top of my head, I don't remember how much it was per megabyte. But I can look it up after this if you want. Any other questions? No? I think that's it, Nick.
Good.
Thank you.
I will say, if you have future questions about setting up Enterprise for yourself, I am not that much longer for the Conservation District World. My last day is on the 30th. So if you want to direct questions to our GIS contractor, Ruth, I'm sure Andrew could share her email / we have another coordinator hired that replaced me, Justin Bennett, who also works at Mason CD. And I'm sure he would be happy to answer questions. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other general questions since we've got the time for GIS?
Yeah, any GIS question you guys have.
Okay, I guess that's it. Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks.